Hello and welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag's video game show. I'm Jordan Miner, joined by fellow appreciator of weird and offbeat video games, Will Greenwald.
Right.
And today we're talking about some of those offbeat video games. Something we noticed recently is that a lot of games that have just come out are in fact sequels to cult hits, strange games, kind of under the radar stuff that years ago you never would have thought it would have gotten a sequel. It's like, oh, I'm glad that this weird thing came out and kind of just be its own thing. No one would ever pay these people, these maniacs, to make another one, but they did, and they paid a couple of them to do it. So we're going to talk about some of those that are quite good. So let's start off with Psychonauts 2. Will, what is Psychonauts?
Psychonauts is my favorite game on the original Xbox, made by Double Fine, Tim Schafer's development company, and just it's this really good, offbeat, weird, humorous third-person platformer. And it was beloved, but it didn't do super well, like commercially, and just it has done nothing for about 16 years until, Microsoft said, hey, Double Fine will pay you to make a sequel, so how about you do that and put it on Xbox? And now it is, and it's on Xbox Game Pass, so you can totally play it if you have Game Pass.
Cool. So imagine that I'm someone who did not play any Psychonauts anything. Where would you can I play this one, the sequel, without any of that backstory? And if not, I guess what do I need to know going in?
You can play it without the backstory. There's actually a nice little sort of movie that just tells you what happened in the first game. And there was a 2017 VR experience that's like sort of a mid chapter, and some stuff happens that I didn't actually play it myself, but you can get caught up. But the original Psychonauts is $10. You can play it in HD on Steam and Xbox, and that's still worth playing too. But you can also just jump into the sequel and get a good sense for everything that's going on and just sort of pick up what's happening, the dynamics of everything, and just like what this world is. It's very good at introducing you to this stuff.
Cool. So they're like, I want to think it's like Earthbound, but they're like kids with like psychic powers, or they're like going into people's brains and stuff.
Specifically, the first game you play Rasputin, who is a boy who left his family in the circus and went to a psychic summer camp and, wacky adventures, saving people, etc., etc. Then the sequel is only a few days after the events of the first one, and now he is fulfilling his dream of actually joining the Psychonauts, this psychic sort of law enforcement heroic force, as an intern, but also trying to just save the world, pretty much.
Cool. Now, I've always appreciated Tim Schafer as like a writer and as a sort of creative, imaginative guy, but I've just never been an adventure game person. I don't like point-and-click adventures, which is kind of where he became famous.
Yeah.
So, is that kind of I don't know, atmosphere or appeal like still in this franchise, despite it's kind of different genre?
Oh yeah, like the aesthetics and the story and characters and even the voice acting, it's all incredibly charming. It's filled with odd whimsy, which is nice. But also mechanically, I would say Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2 are the best playing games Tim Schafer has made. Like,
okay,
his adventure games are classics, but they're adventure games, and I kind of hate those.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's Brutal Legend, which I actually played through and thought wasn't bad, but it also wasn't nearly what people were expecting, and definitely has issues.
It's cool that he's still friends with Jack Black, though. Like,
yeah. And Tim Curry was in that too, which is awesome. Wasn't he? I think he was.
That seems right. I mean, that seems.
Maybe I actually think it was literally Ozzy Osbourne. Sorry, mixing up my Brutal Legend stuff, which no one cares about. We're not going to be seeing a sequel to that, but Psychonauts 2 is very good, and it plays very well. It's like a very strong 3D platformer.
Now, why do you think that people kind of ignored this game back in the day? Like, why did it become just a cult hit as opposed to just like a hit?
It could have come down to marketing, just how many people got into it. Like, these were the days when, Halo was just coming out, and there was definitely a shift away from third-person platformers or 3D platformers. And it's just, it wasn't really the trend at the time. People were getting really into FPSs, especially with Halo on the Xbox. And, the Xbox itself was having trouble finding its footing, aside from being the Halo box. So there just wasn't a whole lot of space for Psychonauts to really become much more than a cult hit.
Cool. But as a longtime fan, and now that you've gotten the sequel, do you feel satisfied? Do you think that is what you want out of a Psychonauts sequel?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a worthy sequel that keeps all of the personality and charm and the stuff that made Psychonauts great intact, and it's also just a very good playing, challenging, entertaining 3D platformer.
Cool. So that's Psychonauts 2. Your review is up. You gave it an editor's choice.
Yep.
Cool. So speaking of, again, our larger theme here is cult sequels. I just reviewed a game called No More Heroes 3 for the Nintendo Switch. Will, are you familiar with this franchise? Or am I just going to be doing a little monologue here for 5 minutes?
No, I'm familiar with it. I am very familiar with Suda51. I actually have a pin of a Grim Reaper wearing sort of weird 3D glasses that he signed at a PAX East.
Is that for Let It Die?
Yes, it's for Let It Die, which was not a bad game, but it was a free-to-play game produced by Suda51, so it was doomed from the beginning.
But it's important that you play that, because No More Heroes 3 does not require you, speaking of cults, you need to be so marinated in the Suda universe to get a lot out of this game, including not having just played No More Heroes 1 and 2, but also having played Travis Strikes Again, his little kind of spin-off game he put out a few years ago that's sort of testing the waters for bringing this franchise back.
There's like plot important stuff in that game, I guess.
Yes, the most important plot stuff is in that game. Like, not like characters, and that whole visual novel sequence in that game is like, yes, that is the most important thing in a lot of ways. Not only that, you need to be familiar with characters from other Suda games that have nothing to do with this universe, like characters from the Silver Case, and even like the Death Drive thing from Let It Die. Like, you were using I think an earlier version of that to kind of use your powers.
Apparently there are references to Killer is Dead.
Yep.
Which is amazing because no one played Killer is Dead. I didn't, and I played Killer is Dead.
Yeah, so now we've alienated everyone, which is what these games are so good at, which is why I love them. No More Heroes 3, like the first two, is a hack and slash game. You play as Travis Touchdown. You are a geek assassin with a ghetto lightsaber that you're using, that in the first few games you use to kill other assassins to kind of become the top ranked one. In this one, it's, however many years later, and now a bunch of like douchebag aliens have invaded, and you have to kill them to win the galactic rankings.
One of the best announcement trailers of a game ever. Like, yeah, that whole thing.
Their whole fake out thing. And those guys are great. The series is known for its very colorful, very over-the-top boss battles. And with this whole intergalactic angle, their designs are like psychedelic in a way that the past two weren't. Like, you just don't know what you're looking at. And they're the kind of grunt soldiers have names like Chest Hole and Diversity. And even just like the main alien villain himself, his name is Fu, which is really funny because it's just like, because if you look at the alphabet, it's
just spelled F-U.
Yeah, but it's also like E-T, and so it's F-U. And like his whole backstory, when he was like a little alien, that the other human bad guy. It's a lot. It's you can talk about this game and you just start rambling. But,
and just the interface looks amazing because it is the most aggressive mixed media. Like, going up to a door, just the screen explodes with many like languages saying okay. And
that, I think, is an improvement over the past two games. They've always been kind of stylish, but I think this game's production value, while it's still not a very expensive game, and we can talk about some of the jank. It's like, yeah, like you said, the mixed media, the different production styles make it feel more just like higher quality and interesting. I think some like the end of the old computer interface for a lot of the menus is something out of like Hyperlight Drifter at times in the ways, and some of like the very like 1995 fonts that they use. It's just a real like sensory overload that I was really into. But even it's just as a hack and slash video game, I think that the combat has never felt this good. The swordplay is very fluid. Like I was alluding to earlier, you now have these death drive powers that you kind of operate on a cooldown, so you can like freeze enemies and do these sort of drop kicks. The way you integrate the wrestling stuff into your moveset is very I don't know. It's the combat flow I'm really into, because like you use your swordplay to kind of stagger enemies, and then you use the wrestling to kind of do these finishers on them. That also, another thing about this game is that your lightsaber runs on energy, and to recharge it, you have to do this little one of these. But when you integrate the wrestling moves, that recharges you automatically, so you can kind of keep your whole thing going. So just as a video game, I think it's very fun to play.
Which is really cool, honestly, after reading your review and seeing some gameplay of like the first level, it's convinced me to get it, because it seems like the most aggressively Suda thing. not like aggressively Suda, like it doesn't distill Suda, but it just sort of explodes what Suda 51 likes to do. I mean, he still definitely has this other weird streak outside of the subversive punk aesthetic where some people might not know that in the very early days of his career, he directed a game called Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Special, where the story campaign for that is the main character basically beats his rival and then kills himself out of melancholy. And that really encapsulates sort of the attitude that Suda 51 and other auteurs like Yoko Taro can do when they just are allowed to do whatever they want to do with the story.
Yeah, so, he's making art games, and we can talk about now. Let's talk about this. Part of when you make an art game, I think, is you need to, or rather, you are inclined to put aspects in the game that are not fun, but are there for some other reason. And so No More Heroes 3, like the first game, in between all the fights, you are in just the worst open worlds. They are just pointless and empty and barren and nothing, and they run like garbage. The fights are pretty, they run fine. The frame rate's fine, but
I still thought it was more fun than No More Heroes 2 with just a little menu. Like I like having even an empty open world.
Yes, I agree, because in No More Heroes 2, they make they strip all that out, they make it a lot more streamlined, and that's better, but it's so much more interesting to have this just like, why am I even doing this? Like it gets you to contemplate the whole part of it. It creates this really fascinating dichotomy between Travis's gory, spectacular assassin life and his just like really pathetic home life where he takes care of his cat. So that stuff is great, even if it's not good. And I'm very
happy. Gene is amazing in this game.
Yes, that voice is out of control. And I'm glad they brought it back in this one. And some people will say it's a problem. They're not wrong to say it's a problem, but they're, I think, wrong to say it's a problem.
I do definitely think that it takes you need to sort of subvert what people expect out of good gameplay to make like a really good art game.
Yes.
But you still need to have a core of fun gameplay, which is going back to Yoko Taro. Like there's a reason everything he made up until Nier Automata, where he worked with Platinum Games, was not really received all that well outside of weird like auteur fans of depressing material. Right. Because going that aggressive against the player to the point that the entire game isn't fun, it's too far in the other direction. And a couple of Suda games also have that problem, but No More Heroes took like a nice balance from the beginning of, hey, here's some fun, and then we put in some garbage in it, but it's still mostly fun.
Yeah, I agree. I'm completely on board with that. I'm on board with this game. I also gave it an editor's choice. It's out now on the Nintendo Switch. So those are kind of the big two, but we kind of, this was like a larger trend we've noticed. Recently Axiom Verge 2 just came out. That wasn't that long ago, but that was, people weren't expecting that. We just got an announcement for a Saints Row reboot. And I guess I didn't realize how long it's actually been since the last core Saints Row game. Saints Row 4 in like 2013.
The last time it came out, THQ still existed.
Right. And that was kind of a glorified piece of DLC. So that's finally coming out. People love that franchise.
And I'm looking forward to it going back to Saints Row 2, because I still think that's like the high point of the series, whereas getting like a bit wacky on the edges, but it was still like a really solid, just like crime story that just, there was a lot of really good stuff in Saints Row 2, but there were also side missions where you drove around a septic tank truck and just sprayed houses. So there's a good combination there.
Yeah, it's kind of this kind of, we're not getting a GTA 6 anytime soon, but like is this sort of offshoot of the more PS2 school of crime open world games that Rockstar sort of drifted away from. So that's coming out in February, actually. So that's pretty soon there.
Yeah.
But the last one I think we wanted to talk about in some depth, I don't think we've covered it yet, but Neo, The World Ends With You, the sequel to cult hit DS game from 14 years ago, The World Ends With You. Something like that. I guess. Something like that.
It was released on the Switch, though, with a really good port.
Yes, it was. Also on iOS, which is where I first played it. But Will, I played the demo. I think you've played the full game.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that I played just for me because I loved it, and I even now as a cult like beloved hit, I think among all the other games we've mentioned, it's still a game that's like pretty obscure that you're not going to find. I'm not sure if anyone who hasn't already heard of The World Ends With You is going to be interested in Neo, The World Ends With You. Like, this isn't going to bring in new fans like Nier Automata will. It's just a really good sequel that smooths over a lot of the way more low-tech and awkward things of the first game, tells kind of a very similar story, has all the same wild aesthetics. And I have to say, like Shibuya and like Harajuku fashion, that's the only place Tetsuya Nomura's aesthetic works.
Yep.
Like that specific part of the real world is the only place his character designs make sense. Even in Kingdom Hearts, his stuff seems too stupid to be real.
Right. And in this, it's coherent because it's drawing from a thing and there's a sense of consistency to it. I'm completely with you on that. I think this is the only good thing that man has ever touched with a paintbrush. I love it. I love the ones with you. But why do you think though that it would only appeal to kind of the people who've already bought in? Because I think one of the things about this game that is potentially welcoming to people is that it seems like it's a more standard. You're not doing the touchscreen dual screen thing. You're not doing the touch screen. Even on iOS, they kind of flattened it to a single character.
But it seems like a version 2 is ported it, so it's sort of like a bit of a combination. They took away that mechanic, but it's still like it is more accessible mechanically. But it's still, and I'm surprised that you like What the World Ends With You because it's just the most. I know. Yeah. It's the most anime thing you can possibly play. That you are playing a kid in Shibuya trying to collect pins while fighting Grim Reapers who are also fashionable teenagers. Like,
I'm a complex person. I remember that time you messaged me, I was at Benihana. You didn't know if I was doing a bit or not. That's not. I love Benihana. And two, again, like I was saying, it's because it feels aesthetically consistent. It's not just like too much anime I don't like just feels truly random. Whereas this, it's all coherent. But
it's Shibuya.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's still like you need to get into that mindset for it. It's not like, oh, let's go on a epic fantasy adventure like most people who are into JRPGs might get into, or like it's like a big sci-fi story. No, this is just weird stuff with dead people being really fashionable in a neighborhood in Tokyo. It's like it is very laser focused in its theming, which is why I was surprised from the beginning that even after they put a teaser in the Switch port of like the extra little chapter, I'm still surprised it's gotten a sequel.
But are you happy? Have you enjoyed it? I like.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's a awesome sequel to the original The World Ends With You. I'm super pleased with it. I would love to see it get another sequel. Like I would love to see this be a series, but it's not the sort of thing I could really see Square turn into a series. Like it would need to be like NIS or like Nihon Falcon, like one of those companies that does like third or fourth tier RPGs where they can just keep feeding stuff like Hyperdimension Neptunia stuff.
Or like what's not Grasshopper, but Marvelous, who publishes No More Heroes. Yeah.
It could be that tier, but like if Square has it, I don't think they're willing to make a sequel where they don't want to put in they want to put in just a little bit of money. That's not really what Square does anymore. So it's like I'm not sure if they would make another sequel to The World Ends With You, but I'd be happy if they did because Neo: The World Ends With You is fantastic.
Cool. Well, let's at least appreciate the fact that we got this one. Yeah. If you haven't played it, the original's on Switch. And I think if you played stuff like Persona 5 or even like Splatoon, I think has a lot of the same energy.
Splatoon definitely takes that Shibuya aesthetic and just Nintendo-fies it and adds SimSpeak. So
yeah, I've called Splatoon The World Ends With You meets SpongeBob SquarePants in the past. But if you vibed on that stuff, I think you should give this a shot. So yeah, we talked about Neo: The World Ends With You, No More Heroes 3, and Psychonauts 2, games that we never thought we'd ever get in our lifetimes, but we did. So let's play them while we got them. We got reviews of 2 of those on the site. We like them a lot. Check them out. Will, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time.